Good morning. I hope you're having an absolutely fantastic day. And I'm so sorry that there wasn't a video on Wednesday or the Friday before that or the Wednesday before that. I've been super busy recently. I had quite a major client project come through that had really short deadlines, and then I immediately went off to London to sing in 2 of the proms this year with the BBC National Chorus of Wales, which took up a whole load of time. So I apologise for the lateness of this video, but a couple of weeks ago I said I was going to be doing a Q&A, and that's exactly what this video is going to be. I'm going to be doing a 7,500 subscriber Q&A. And it goes without saying, thank you so much to those of you who tune into my channel and watch my videos. It means so much to me, and 7,500 is a crazy number. Maybe one day I'll have 10,000 subscribers. It should only take me about, I don't know, between 4 and 12 years. Anyway, thank you so much to those of you who have supported this channel over the years, and new subscribers, if there are any of you watching. We've achieved some pretty cool stuff, I think. The vinyl pressing being one of the best achievements I've ever experienced, and I know that that wouldn't have been possible without you, so it's awesome. Thank you. Anyway, I'm going to stop waffling now and we'll get straight into the Q&A. Have you ever listened to an artist called Dean Lewis? I have not. To be honest, I haven't even heard of Dean Lewis, but I will definitely be checking his stuff out, and if I do like it, I'm sure 1 or 2 tracks will appear in my playlist updates over the next few months. Hi Tom, I've been enjoying your ambient film soundtrack stuff you've been releasing lately. Thank you very much. And I was wondering if you were thinking about releasing music with the same influence but with vocals. Yes, I am. I'm in fact currently producing a vocal EP, but more on that later. Although not all of the influences will be the same. It's not just going to be a load of ambient tracks with me singing on top of them. There'll be more information about that in the future, but the short answer is yes. Have you considered learning jazz music, how jazz harmony works, how to improvise? The reason why I'm saying this is because you mainly make instrumental music and 80% of the jazz repertoire is instrumental. It's another approach. Jazz is more in the moment / live music. So no, not really. When I was younger and I was taking piano lessons, and I'm talking about when I was like 13 to 15 at school, I did a bit of blues and jazz then, so I kind of learned the basics of jazz scales and all that stuff. But it's never been a style of music that I've particularly wanted to emulate myself. I love jazz. I listen to it semi-regularly. I mean, Chet Baker Sings and Plays is one of my favorite records of all time, but it's just something that I feel takes a huge amount of practice and dedication to get really good at, and I don't release jazz music, so it's not something that I would consider learning properly. I love jazz, but me trying to relearn and fumble my way through jazz scales on the piano isn't going to be much of a service to the genre. How come you rarely discuss music from before the 21st century, and with only a few exceptions such as your classical section, it does not feature that much in such an extensive record collection? That's a really good question, and I'm not totally sure, to be honest. I certainly listen to music from before the 21st century. It's not like I exclusively listen to either classical music or modern pop music, but I probably listen to less music from before the 21st century than I do modern music. I mean, I'm a big believer in evolving one's music taste. You know, I can't stand people who've been listening to the same like 2 genres of music for 20 years. It's like there's so much music that exists in the world, like keep listening to new stuff as it comes out. So that might be why I rarely talk about it on this channel, because most of the music discussions that I have are based on new music that I've discovered and new artists that I've discovered. But I certainly listen to music from before the 21st century. I mean, like I said earlier, Chet Baker is one of my favorite artists. I really like Nat King Cole, and I listen to a whole lot of rock music from between, you know, the 60s to the 90s. I just don't talk about it very much because I'm always listening to new music, and when I do listen to stuff like that, it's more just for my own pleasure because I enjoy it. I don't feel like I would be putting anything new out into the world if I started giving my review of, you know, Chet Baker Sings and Plays, for example. It's just a brilliant record that I enjoy listening to. Hi Tom, I thought as you like Nightwish, you might like a similar-ish band called Evanescence. I have of course heard of Evanescence. I used to listen to them all the time when I was a teenager. They haven't stuck with me in the way that Nightwish has. I feel like Nightwish is just a bit more of an interesting band, and I wouldn't really say that I listen to Evanescence at all now. Is Here's My Heart to do with Faith at all? It's my favourite so far, just wondered. Very glad that you like it, and yes, that's exactly what it's about. What is it like to listen to your own music that you wrote? Do you listen to your own songs often? Listening to your own music is a bit strange, but it entirely depends on why you're listening to it. So I listen to my own stuff primarily to check the mix. So I'll create like a version 1 of a new track, and then I'll put it in my Dropbox, put some headphones on, go for a walk and listen to it and make notes. So normally whenever I listen to music that I personally have created, it's purely from a sort of academic perspective. That's probably the wrong word to use. Yeah, I'm just listening to it so that I can make it better. Occasionally I will have moments where I'll listen to my own music and think, yeah, I'm actually quite proud of that. I really like it. But that's quite rare for 2 reasons. The first of which being, usually I'm so sick of listening to the track by the time it's released that I never ever want to hear it ever again. So I will avoid listening to it for a long period of time, because what people probably overlook a bit when it comes to creating music is that something that takes you 2.5, 3.5 minutes to consume, and you are immediately presented with this finished thing, has taken someone like me like weeks or even months in some cases to create. And I've just been listening to it over and over and over and over again, analyzing all of these tiny little details, trying to fix the smallest little misplaced crescendo in one string part. Usually when I release a piece of music, I am kind of just relieved to not have to listen to it anymore. And then the second reason, which sort of ties into the first reason, is that because it's been so long since you listened to something, when you tend to revisit it, your production and mixing standards should have improved in that time. So you'll listen to it and think, oh, why didn't I compress that snare more? Or there's way too much 2K in the strings. Hearing all of these little imperfections that you know there's no way of fixing now because it's already out there. That's something that usually isn't actually a problem except in your head. And when you kind of get over that and just accept that it's something that you wrote, you can sit back and be like, you know what, I'm proud of this. I'm proud of the achievement of writing this music. But yeah, mostly I don't do it. Finally, do you collect CDs at all? No, not anymore, but I do have a CD collection from when I was a teenager and I used to buy loads of music on CDs. It's all at my parents' house. I've got like the first 2 Owl City albums, a whole load of Nightwish. I've got a couple of Sonata Arctica albums on CD, and like Take That, Keen, like loads of random stuff. I think I've probably got about 50 to 70 CDs, but they're not here, they're all somewhere else, because I don't have a CD player anymore, and it's too much hassle to get my Apple Superdrive out of its box to plug it in just to play it on CD. And I've got Spotify, so everything that exists on CD, if I want to listen to it now, I can just listen to it on Spotify. But if I was seeing an artist that I really liked play live, and the only merch that they had was a CD and I wanted to support them, I'd definitely buy their CD, yeah. I like your music, thank you, but I feel some things that could improve it would be more synths and drums. As a question for you, I wonder, have you thought about doing field recordings? Also, is there any chance you could do your own take of a Lord of the Rings track? By the way, some of the upcoming tracks that I'm releasing have got a lot more drums and synths in them than some of the other ones, so hopefully you'll like those more. Have I ever thought about doing field recordings? Yes, I do field recordings regularly. If you check out some of the videos I've made on how I produce certain tracks, you can see I make field recordings for ambiances, and then I've sometimes morphed those into percussive elements of tracks as well. I really like getting field recordings. I haven't ever gone out and spent a whole day doing it before, but I always like to create a sort of bedrock of atmosphere for a track, to just stick my microphone out of the window and just record that for about 10 minutes and then chop that in half and then have one panned hard left, one hard right, and it just kind of creates a nice organic texture. And there is absolutely zero chance of me doing my own take on a Lord of the Rings track. What's the hardest part in music production? The hardest part in music production is starting, is kind of creating something from nothing. That's what I find really difficult, especially when it comes to writing to picture. When a client sends you a video file and you put it into Logic or whatever your DAW is, and there's nothing there, and you've got to start and you've got to create something, that's the hardest part. As soon as you have a start point, it gets a bit easier. But I'd say there are 2 other things that are really hard. First of which being mixing. I've said before that when I mix stuff, I export all of the stems from the production file, completely dry with no effects on them, bring them into a new project, start mixing everything from scratch. I find it's really useful to have a completely fresh perspective on a track that you're working on, and it also stops you from getting distracted with the music. It kind of means you can take off your composing hat and put on your mixing engineer's cap. But the beginning of that is always difficult because you're suddenly hearing a track you've been listening to for a long time sounding absolutely terrible because everything is, you know, too loud and not balanced and all the effects have gone. And then the third hardest thing is when you're happy with a track but you know that it's missing something but you're not sure what that is. Where did you learn to mix and master your music? Did you take lessons, go to school, or did you learn by trial and error? Pretty much all of them. I started getting interested in music production when I was about 15, 16 years old on a cracked copy of Fruity Loops that someone gave me. So I was kind of self-taught in the basics of production. I don't know if you're asking about mixing and mastering exclusively or if you kind of mean music production in general. Yeah, started off at school, and then after my A-levels I went on to do a BTEC in music technology at Stroud College. And the reason that I did that was because I knew that I wanted to study it at university and I didn't have a qualification to enable me to get onto a university course yet. So I did the BTEC for 2 years and then I went to university for 3 years and studied music tech. So I've spent a good deal of time within formal education learning about this sort of stuff. However, I do feel like a university degree in music technology is kind of useless unless you are also willing to learn it yourself, because lots of people go and study music technology because they think that they'll do a course and then they'll just become Ed Sheeran It doesn't work like that. And I found that some of the teaching was really good and valuable, and some of it was just really, really not good. So alongside all the stuff that I learned at college and at university, I was also self-teaching as well. And I will say this, it's been 2 years since I graduated, and I have learned more in the 2 years outside of education than I ever did when I was in education. And I realized once I wasn't in uni, how much of the stuff that we were kind of taught about isn't really relevant or isn't very useful. And in terms of mixing and mastering specifically, I'd say it's almost exclusively self-taught since graduating, and a huge part of that is due to the fact that I lived with my very good friend David Thomas, who is a professional mixing engineer. So he was always there to offer me some advice or show me some tips. So yeah, a bit of help from him, and I still use him as my sort of fail-safe ears. So we meet for coffee almost every day, and whenever I think I've finished a track, I'll let him have a listen to my final mix just in case there's anything that he notices, because his ears are insanely good. So yeah, 5 years of studying it formally in educational institutions, and then alongside that, self-taught, grinding, trial and error, all of that stuff. You've got to do everything. You've got to do everything that you can to try and get good, basically. You've got to put your 10,000 hours in. Do you like Kate Bush? I'm not sure, but I'll find out. Firstly, I love the blend between both your instrumental and your ambient music. With the more structured, heavier stuff, for me, there's nothing better than an ambient orchestral and synthy piece with a big orchestral climax with such inspiration and power in it. Thank you for your kind words. I really appreciate that. When you're producing your instrumental music, the more ambient orchestral stuff, what artist/band is your main influence and inspiration? Someone you think of when you say, this sounds like this artist. I hear a lot of Adam Young influences. This is probably the reason your music is so beautiful to me. I'm going to be totally honest. I think some people think that because I have acknowledged that I am a big fan of his work, which I am, that's like the only source of musical inspiration I've ever had, and like that's the reason that I wanted to create music, which is so not true. I know that you didn't mean it in a rude way, by the way. I appreciate it. It doesn't happen so much anymore, which I think is a good sign of development for me, but it used to be the case that I would like put up a track and the first comment would be like, this sounds like Adam Young. I'd be like, that's a real punch in the gut. It's like, I'm trying to make music that is mine, not his. You know, I was listening to Boards of Canada and Helios before I knew about Port Blue, so it's a tricky question to answer. So I don't tend to think to myself, this is my main inspiration, you know, or I want it to sound like this. I will think that from time to time with certain tracks. So an example is my track The River 7, which is coming out in a month's time. That one, I specifically wanted it to have Port Blue vibes to it. So I wrote it in mind thinking about things like the types of melodies that you hear in Port Blue tracks and the types of backing that you get. With He Is My Heart, for example, I wasn't trying to sound like an artist, but I knew that I wanted to create an ambient post-rock track. So I would draw inspiration from all of the ambient post-rock artists that I listen to and use that as a kind of foundation of ideas that I can then base my music on or take inspiration from. So I will never try and like copy another artist's sound, because I think that that's the most obvious way to be unoriginal, and also because I work as a media composer primarily, I'm in the stage of my career where I'm trying to develop my own sound and my own style, and hopefully one day people will say to someone else, hey, this sounds like Thomas James White. That would be nice. But it takes a really, really long time to develop your own style. And yeah, there will be influences from other artists. And like even with Adam Young, I used to listen to and still do listen to quite a lot of his stuff. And I'm sure that there will be influences of that in my music that have come in subconsciously, like definitely. But a whole host of instrumental artists are my inspiration, my influence, as well as a whole host of film composers. There is no one artist that I try to be like. And I think that would be an incredibly damaging thing to do. I think in the past you've said On the Wing is your favorite Owl City song. What piece of music that Adam has created inspired you the most in the music you make now? Could be Port Blue, Insect Airport, Sky Sailing. With regards to Adam Young's projects, like I said, it's not that like one of them directly informs the music that I make now. His projects are part of a catalogue of artists that I listen to and I'm inspired by. But my favorite instrumental project from Adam Young was Insect Airport. But there are also a couple of other standout tracks that were the ones that I have probably listened to the most. I can think of probably 4 off the top of my head. So one of them is Pond Skater by Port Blue. That was one of the first pieces of music that I can remember listening to and thinking in my head, how the hell does he make the drum kit sound like that? And just wanting to know what I could do to sounds to make them sound like that. I was just fascinated by it. The second track would be At Anchor, which is the final track on the Port Blue album, The Airship, the one that starts off with just like 45 seconds of the sound of someone walking. The third track is a Windsor Airlift track, but it's a Windsor Airlift track from when Adam Young was still involved with Windsor Airlift. The theme for Moonglow. The fourth track, She and I Swam Down the Staircase. Hey Tom, this is not a question related to music, but I wondered, when was the last time you felt alive? I had a pretty good morning. I woke up feeling really fresh, and that doesn't usually happen to me. It takes me ages to wake up, but I kind of just woke up and was like, oh, I'm awake. Nice. So probably this morning. When do you plan on releasing the vocal EP, and are you the singer or are you collaborating with someone? Love your music and channel. Thank you so much for your support. The vocal EP, I'm going to be doing a video in the next week or two going into more detail about that. There has been a change to the release date. I know I'd originally said the 27th of September the first single would be coming out, but the vocal EP in general will be coming out in 2020, but in the first half of 2020. And yes, I will be the one singing on it. I apologize in advance, and I might try and get a collaboration. There are a couple of really, really talented female singers that I know that I wouldn't mind getting involved on a couple of the tracks, but not totally sure yet. When are you more productive, in the day or in the AM? If you'd asked me that about 4 or 5 years ago, I probably would have said that I'm more productive at nighttime, because that's like the edgy thing to say, isn't it? It's like, oh, I'm a night owl. Like, I can only work between the hours of midnight and 5 o'clock in the morning. But to be honest, I'm most productive when deadlines get closer. So it doesn't really matter. There are times now that I will pull all-nighters and be really productive. There are other times that I'll get up at 7:30 in the morning, have a cup of tea, sit down on my computer and not stand up again until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, where I'll go and make some lunch. I'm not one or the other. So to answer your question, I really don't know. I enjoy getting up early and being really productive during the day, but at the same time, there is a certain magic and excitement that you feel when it's 4 o'clock in the morning and you know that everywhere else is asleep and you're sat there at your computer being productive and making music. Like, that's still a nice feeling. 2 questions. Are you familiar with Hayden Calnan? No, I'm not. I will check that artist out and potentially put them in a playlist if I like them. I'll do that with all of the artists that people have mentioned in this video. Would you consider doing a live tour at some point? No, I don't currently have any plans to do live shows. That could change in the future. It will depend on so many different factors, partly being whether or not I have enough people who listen to my music that it would be worth going on tour. I have thought about this kind of stuff before. I would love to be in a situation where I could go and actually perform live to people and do like an instrumental show. I think that would be so cool and so much fun. I know what my setup would be were I to do that, and I would probably want, if money were no object, I'd want there to be a live drummer there. Probably a live drummer, a live guitarist, and then me, and I would have a keyboard. I'd probably have my MS-20 to the side of me, and I'd have like a octo pad thing, those Alesis sample triggers. Keyboard would be connected to my laptop, which would have backing track for the whole set, and then underneath that, different contact libraries with the instrument for each individual track loaded. So if in one track a piano is the main instrument, I can click on that and there's already a piano that I've kind of sculpted for that track to be there. And then if the next track it needs to be more of a synthy drone, then just click on that. Yeah, like, I kind of feel like I have an idea of how I would do a live show, but I don't think anyone would go. If I were to do a live show, like, I've thought about it, I might do one in Cardiff at some point as like a trial run on whether or not it would even be possible. But I'd have to try and make it interesting. Like, lighting would have to be cool. But yeah, so no, there are no, I'm not going to be announcing a tour anytime soon, to answer your question. No. Why don't you have more subscribers? Your guess is as good as mine. I think part of the reason for that is because I don't actually care about subscribers. Like, I mean, obviously I do. Everyone does. No one is going to be like, oh, I don't care about it, because the reason I make videos is for people to watch them. But I don't aspire to be a YouTuber. This isn't something that I would want to make a video every single day and for this to be my source of income and all of that. I want to be a composer. So I'm not going to chase after fads or video styles that are popular. I'll never do daily vlogging. I also think I don't have many subscribers because my content's quite boring. Well, I don't know, to be honest. Making me think about this now. I used to gain a lot more subscribers than I do now. I think part of the issue is that I haven't always been consistent in my content. People who watch some stupid video that I made like years ago on like, oh, the 3 things I love about living in Cardiff, then they'll subscribe for that and then realize that I don't really do those kinds of videos, so then unsubscribe. But yeah, I'm kind of inconsistent in my content. I think that ultimately I don't have more subscribers because it's not something that I dedicate all of my time to. If I really wanted to be a huge success on YouTube, then I would put way more effort into it. I'd put more, well, not more effort, because I put a lot of effort into these videos when I make them, but I would put more time into them and I would make more videos, basically. If I wanted to do more, I'd have to start making 3-4 videos a week, and putting loads of effort into filming them and actually probably buy a drone and all of this kind of stuff that I just don't really have the time for because I spend my days writing music. So that's why I don't have as many subscribers, I think. Or it could just be that I'm a knob, so either one. Have you heard and or listened to Sleeping at Last? I've heard of Sleeping at Last. The name rings a bell. I couldn't say that I know any of their songs, but as with all of the other artists or bands, I'll have a listen and might chuck a couple of tracks into the playlists that I make every month if I like it. So thank you for the recommendation. How do you play the 5th track of your vinyl EP without damaging the record? It's a locked groove, basically. So if you own a copy of my debut EP, Her on vinyl, which is linked below if you wanted to pick one of them up, there is a secret 5th track on it. But that 5th track has vocals on it and doesn't fit in with the rest of the EP totally. I kind of wanted to put that on there as a sort of teaser for the fact that I'm doing a vocal EP, not that that track is going to be on the vocal EP, because quite frankly, I think that track isn't very good anymore. Because it's a very different track to the rest of the EP, I didn't want Her to finish and then just immediately start playing this other track and people would be like, what? That's weird. That's kind of ruined the vibe of the EP. So there's a locked groove in place, which means that when the record finishes, it will kind of, the groove runs back into itself. So that's kind of like the end of the record. If you want to listen to the 5th track, you just have to manually pick up the stylus and plonk it into the next groove in the same way that you would when you start a record. You pick it up, put it on the edge. Just do that. It's not like it starts immediately, so you're not going to damage any of the grooves. Just make sure it's close and you'll be fine. But don't listen to it, it's terrible. Do you plan on doing collaborations with any producers/singers in the near future? I don't have any specific plans to do that, but I would certainly be up for doing it. I mean, I've got a lot of friends that write music, and I'd love to collaborate with loads of them, and I'm sure that we will. I'm currently involved in the early planning stages of a collaborative project between myself, David Thomas, and Sam Taylor, who's the lead singer of Paradise Now. That's a kind of collaborative thing that we're doing together, but I'd definitely be up for collaborating with certain artists and singers. And the final question, what DAW would you recommend for someone that owns a Windows PC? I am not totally sure because I don't own a Windows PC. It does depend on what you want to do. Pro Tools is the best for mixing. Pro Tools is also industry standard in various different areas. If you want to compose music, you know, orchestral stuff, probably Cubase or Studio One. I mean, Hans Zimmer uses Cubase, so there we have it. Those are all the questions that you asked. If you have any more, or if I overlooked any or didn't see any, let me know what they are down in the comment section there, and I'll type up an answer for you there as well. Thank you again for your support. I know I can be a bit grumpy and waffly sometimes, but I really, truly do appreciate every single one of you that takes time out of their day to watch my videos and listen to what I have to say. So thank you so much for that. 7,500 is seriously like such a cool number. And it's so nice to see so many of you being supportive and encouraging about my music. Because I was always nervous about pushing my music on this platform, because if people had gotten used to what I make just being videos and reviews, you know, it might put people off, but you've been so warmly receptive to it, and I honestly can't thank you enough. On that note, there will be links in the description to my most recent single release, Be At Rest, as well as a pre-save link to my next instrumental track, which is called Drench. That comes out next Friday. If you're a Spotify user, be sure to hit follow on my Spotify page so that you can have the new tracks added to your release radars and hear them as soon as they come out, because like I said, I'm releasing a new piece of music every 3 weeks. Thank you so much for watching. I really do hope that you've enjoyed this. Have an absolutely fantastic day, and I'll see you very soon.